The diner was quiet that rainy afternoon, the kind of quiet that made you hear every heartbeat and every sigh. Emily wiped the counter with slow, thoughtful movements, humming softly under her breath, a habit she picked up to fill the silence that had become her only friend. At 24, she was known as the shy waitress at Carter's diner, the one who always smiled, rarely spoke, and treated every customer with a gentle warmth that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. She wasn't the type to draw attention, not the type anyone would call remarkable. But sometimes, the smallest souls carry the deepest kindness, and that day, when the door chimed and a sharply dressed man stepped in, her quiet life began to change in ways she could never have imagined. The man was tall, confident, the kind of person who didn't blend in no matter where he went. His tailored suit was dark and sleek, the kind you didn't often see in small-town diners. He looked around as though lost, before taking a seat by the window. Emily approached, her notepad trembling slightly in her hand. "Good afternoon, sir. What can I get for you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He smiled politely but distractedly. "Just coffee. Black, please." She nodded and poured him a steaming cup. As she placed it on the table, she noticed something in his eyes. A kind of exhaustion. Not from lack of sleep, but from carrying something heavier. He thanked her, but his gaze lingered on the rain streaking down the glass. Minutes later, Emily heard the bell above the door again. This time, an elderly woman entered, moving slowly, guided by a caretaker. Her silver hair was neatly tied in a bun, her eyes soft but distant. The caretaker signed something with her hands, and the woman responded with a smile. Emily froze. She recognized the signs. American Sign Language. Her heart fluttered. For years, she had learned sign language in secret. Her younger brother, before he passed away, had been deaf. Learning to communicate with him had been her way of saying, "I love you," in a language the world often ignored. Without thinking, she stepped forward. Would she like a booth or table? Emily asked the caretaker gently. The caretaker turned, surprised. "You sign?" Emily smiled shyly and nodded. She turned to the elderly woman and signed, "Welcome to Carter's Diner." "My name's Emily. It's lovely to have you here." The woman's face lit up instantly. Her hands moved gracefully as she replied, "It's lovely to meet you, Emily. You signed beautifully." For the first time that day, the diner didn't feel quiet anymore. Emily guided the woman, whose name was Evelyn, to a booth and took her order entirely through sign language. Other customers glanced over, curious and touched by the exchange. Even the man in the suit by the window watched, a strange look in his eyes. When Emily returned to deliver Evelyn's tea and soup, she noticed the man had joined them. His hand rested gently on the old woman's shoulder. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" Emily asked softly. He smiled. "That's my mother. Thank you for speaking with her. It's rare." Emily nodded. "She's wonderful. And she's got a beautiful smile." He laughed quietly, a sound that seemed to thaw something frozen inside him. "Yes, she does." Evelyn reached for her son's hand and signed something. Emily hesitated, then interpreted with a warm smile. "She says she likes you. You remind her of someone she once knew." The man blinked in surprise, watching his mother, then Emily. "You understood that perfectly." "I had a brother," Emily said softly. "He was deaf. He taught me more about life than anyone ever could." Something in that confession shifted the air around them. The man, whose name was Alexander, looked at her differently now, as though he was seeing her for the first time. Not as a waitress, not as someone serving coffee, but as someone who had lived quietly with kindness stitched into her soul. Over the next hour, the three of them talked, or rather, signed. Emily translated when needed. But Evelyn often took the lead, her laughter echoing like a melody that had long been missing from her son's world. When they finally left, Alexander thanked her again. "You made her day," he said. "You have no idea how much that means." Emily smiled shyly. "I'm glad she felt happy. That's all that matters." And then she went back to wiping counters, unaware that her simple kindness had just changed everything. 2 days later, the diner buzzed with whispers. A sleek black car pulled up outside. The kind of car that didn't belong on their side of town. Out stepped Alexander, again in a tailored suit, his expression unreadable. Everyone stared as he walked straight to Emily. "Miss Emily," he said, his voice calm but filled with emotion. Could we talk? Her hands fidgeted nervously. Of course, sir. Did something happen? He smiled faintly. Something wonderful, actually. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter with elegant handwriting. Evelyn's. Emily read, her lips trembling as she signed the words aloud. You reminded me that the world still speaks the language of kindness. I want you to work with me. Not for me. My foundation helps children with hearing loss, and I believe you belong there. Emily's breath caught. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. Alexander looked at her, his own voice thick with feeling. Say yes. My mother hasn't smiled like that in years. You brought light back into her world. The diner went silent as Emily stood there, tears streaming down her cheeks. Every person watching felt something deep stir in their chest. That unexplainable ache that comes when you witness genuine kindness being recognized. Months later, Emily's life looked nothing like before. She stood on a stage, interpreting for children as Evelyn's Foundation launched a new program. She looked out at the audience, rows of parents, kids signing with laughter and joy. In the front row, Evelyn watched proudly, hands clasped. Beside her sat Alexander, his gaze steady and filled with quiet admiration. When Emily finished translating a young boy's speech, the crowd erupted into applause. Evelyn stood, her trembling hands signing across the room. You changed my son's heart, Emily. You reminded him what matters. Emily smiled, her throat tightening. She signed back, he changed mine too. Alexander rose and walked toward her, his eyes glassy. You don't know what that day in the diner did, he whispered. I'd been living in silence too. Not the kind my mother has, but the kind you build around yourself when you forget how to feel. Emily's tears spilled freely now, as his mother watched them both with a smile that seemed to light up the room. I thought I was just serving coffee. Emily whispered. I didn't know I was serving hope. Alexander shook his head softly. You did more than that. You reminded me that the greatest wealth isn't money. It's the people who bring meaning to our days. As applause filled the hall, Emily stood there, the shy waitress who once believed her voice didn't matter. Now the heartbeat of something far bigger. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew this: sometimes a quiet act of kindness can ripple so far it changes lives that were never meant to cross paths. And in that moment, surrounded by laughter, applause, and tears, she realized she hadn't just signed to a billionaire's deaf mother. She had spoken directly to the part of the world that still believes in kindness.